How many of you feel like education is essentially constantly and repeatedly asking you to make the following decision? Will you forego a small reward now for a bigger reward later or not? And how do you answer this question? Well, it turns out that when they actually do place people in a situation where they're confronted with temptation, that how they answer this question is almost irrational. That in the moment, given the temptation, that more often than not, they'll choose to do the thing that's tempting. The reason why it's difficult to do is because it has to do with a hot and cold system that operates in our minds. Your thoughts actually orient themselves to support your intuition, your gut feeling, your emotion to want to engage in the temptation now as opposed to doing the rational thing, which is to forego it till later. In fact, when we talk about sort of the domain of psychology and how we're able to predict long-term outcomes, even personality, some of the classical experiments, like the Marshmallow test, did exactly this. They put these young, poor children in front of a marshmallow and said, you could have this marshmallow now, but if you wait a little bit longer, we'll give you twice as much. 2/3 consistently failed. Now, maybe they're children, but I bet you the same thing happens with adults. 2/3 failed, and that's not the most important thing. What ends up being sort of highlighted in this research is that what happens later, decades after these children made these choices. Decades later, the kids who chose not to wait ended up being individuals who were more frustrated, were more indecisive, more disorganized. Whereas those who waited were more confident, were more self-reliant, and they scored about 200 points higher on the SATs. Recent revisions of those early studies have found something very profound, that the individuals who were able to wait and delay gratification were actually the ones that were able to engage in distraction strategies, the ones that did not look at the marshmallow, the ones that did not lick it or smell it, the ones that maybe pushed it away from themselves or kept themselves busy by playing with their feet or looking around and thinking of sort of little games in their mind. So the notion that when the time comes that your willpower will kick in and you will do what is right is potentially setting you up for failure. One of the things that I recommend is recognizing the fallibility of emotions. To rely on emotions as a source of valid information may not always serve our purposes. I call this principle devotion over emotion. That when you're asked to study, do not expect that you'll feel motivated and enthusiastic about studying. That's not how it works. That studying shouldn't be fast and have the state of flow. That in fact, studying is something that is arduous. So recognizing what your emotions are saying, and then reminding yourselves of why you're devoted to this task in the first place. And trumping the emotion by employing your higher order rational processing system to say, this is not accurate information, I will stay engaged with what I've devoted to, what I've decided to. Devotion over emotion is one of the strategies you can employ. Potentially one of the most powerful strategies that students can employ and almost never do is where they place themselves in the classroom. You walk into any classroom and what are the seats that are always empty? The front of the class. Ironic, because if you place yourself at the back of the class, what does your field of vision see? Everything. Everything you're allowing to come into your field of vision and distract you. And I say this word intentionally. You are allowing it. It is your choice. You are allowing it. Why don't you go in the front where your field of vision only has sights on one thing, the teacher? Why would you rely on willpower by sitting in the back and have it fail over and over and over again and not do what you're there to do? You're there to study. You're not there to people watch. And so this comes with a bit of a challenge because these beliefs, these sort of underlying mindsets, at times are rewarding and they're comfortable. Our myopia has to do with the fact that we can only sort of typically focus on what's in front of us. That for us to remember the long-term rewards, which could be the 2 marshmallows, if we're able to keep that top of mind, then the short-term reward of temptation does not seem as tempting.